I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Welcome, everybody. It's Rachel, and I'm recording an official podcast studio. I've got cameras on me. I'm loving it. I didn't prepare a personal update. I guess I just worked an event over at Apple and popped on over here to Madrona because I'm sitting with my good friend, Coral Garnick Ducken, digital editor of Madrona.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for having me back.
Having you back is right, because you were here. I looked at the calendar. You were on May 23rd.
Oh, okay. So
last
it's
year.
Almost a year.
Almost a year. And we were talking about how last time I came in here and I remember like being kind of nervous. You had just opened this podcast studio. We were kind of like testing it out. And now I'm like, I don't know. We'll be fine. Let's just talk about the news.
We got new furniture. It's great.
I know. It looks good. So for those that don't remember, if you didn't watch Coral's or watch or listen to Coral's episode, she is the digital editor here at Madrona. But before that, she worked in the content side of Blueprint Technologies. And before that, why I know you is that you were both a reporter and then associate editor at the Puget Sound Business Journal. So that's where we worked together.
Yes.
So you've had a little bit of a journalistic side and then moved into the content side. So real quick, can you remind us a little bit about what is Madrona and what do you do over here?
So Madrona is a venture capital firm here in Seattle, the big venture capital firm here in Seattle. And for those who don't know, venture capital, basically we have a fund of money that we get from a lot of other investors. We call them limited partners, and we invest that money into startups. And at Madrona, we do kind of our core fund, early stage investing, but also have a acceleration fund so we can do some later stage and bigger checks.
Do you know like about how many companies you're invested in right now?
I believe it's a little over 100, they said at our annual meeting last month.
Yeah, I think last time I said, so it's like horse racing, but you're betting on startups and horses. Okay, so I want to check in since we last recorded. What's been different for you? What's changed at Madrona?
Well, the big change for me on the content side of things is that I lost my lovely boss, and I say lost because I miss her, but she's
still alive.
She's still alive. She left us for one of our portfolio companies, which is an awesome opportunity for her to go help one of our biotech companies really kind of get to the next level. But I miss her dearly.
I bet. But you also have a podcast because we were testing out the studio and now it's up and running. Remind me.
Yeah, so we're doing it almost all video when we can. We get our guests to come in and we do it live here. We still every once in a while do virtual video recordings that way as well, but try to do some arm twisting to get people to come to Seattle.
What's it called?
Founded and Funded.
Founded and Funded. And you said you're not on it, but you sometimes are?
Yes.
Okay.
So mostly because it's like the name Founded and Funded. So it's one of our investors, the funders, with one of our CEOs and founders. And, they talk about their whole startup journey and everything. But I also, when I started, launched an investor spotlight portion of it so that people can also learn who our investors are and a little bit about them. And, if a founder goes to our website and wants to know who these people are that maybe they're going to have a meeting with, they can watch a little 10-15-minute video about what makes this person tick, what do they look for in a founder, all that kind of stuff.
That's smart. It's funny because way back when I kept trying to get you to MC events at PSBJ and you were like, absolutely not. I do not want to do that.
Thank you.
And now look at you. So
You've been pushing me this whole it's been you from the get-go making me do more and more of these things.
You're so good at it. That's why. Okay, so I mentioned you were on the journalistic side and then you moved over to more of the content for a specific company.
Yes.
What was that transition like for you? Do you miss reporting on the news?
I do. Well, so I was at the Seattle Times for a little over 3 years and the Business Journal for about 4. So, that was and that was my life. I went to grad school for journalism. It was, everything I wanted to do. And, but I had fun at Blueprint. It was a great team, but the content that I was working on was all very a bit repetitious, kind of the same thing over and over again. So when I got the opportunity to come to Madrona, I jumped at it, and it's been really fun. It's very journalistic in a sense, and every day I'm kind of working on something different. But I also, there's a lot more than just what I was doing reporting because I'm doing podcast and there's a little bit of project management and event stuff. And, it's a startup in itself, kind of the way we operate, just everybody, small team, everybody's doing everything. You don't miss chasing
the story?
I don't miss that part so
Bringing
much.
down fraud. That's fair.
Covering grocery stores.
Grocery stores, yes, which we're going to talk about. We have a lot of topics, but I have one more question, and I'll get you out of the hot seat. But you in your LinkedIn and just from knowing you, I know you have a passion for storytelling. So I want to know from you, what do you think makes a good story, and what advice do you have for other people as they go and tell their stories? Maybe they're, writing for their company or trying to do a PR release or whatever.
I mean, the big thing with a PR release, I feel like I have a lot of feelings about that because it's always like, don't think of it as like some product announcement or this or that. It's like really all about finding that story. What is it that for us, it's always working with founders. What is that founder story? Why did you get into what you do? Why are you so passionate about it? Like, what made you want to go and, spend a decade working on this particular problem? And like that passion comes out as you describe it to people. And like, that's the story that's going to come through when, if it gets picked up in TechCrunch or wherever.
So making it personal.
Making it personal. I mean, that's why I got into journalism in the first place. Business reporting was never like the goal. It was, I wanted to tell people stories. I wanted to just be able to sit down and BS with somebody and like what makes them who they are and what makes them tick and how'd they get to where they are.
Yeah, I remember we did the 40 Under 40 program together, and I mean all the awards programs, but that I felt like you really got to know each person's individual story, and you hear about like their mom who passed away and it inspired them to do this and that. And so I thought, yeah, you did a great job with that.
And it's always digging for like you ask why 10 more times because it's like somebody's like, oh, well, why did you do this? And you have some answer that you respond because you're like, oh, I wanted to do that since I was 10. And it's like, well, why did you want to do that since you were 10? Well, what happened at that point that made you think about that thing that, oh, now you're going and studying whatever it is, physics.
Right, right. Well, I think that's good advice for people out there. Keep asking why. All right, we have 5 stories. We have a lot to cover.
Yes.
I do want to publicly apologize because I was thinking about this episode with you, and we've already had you on and we've heard a little bit about your story, and I like to mix with CEOs as our guest and journalists. CEOs, you get to hear, like we talked about, their story of how they came to be in their company. But with journalists, I feel like we can just shoot the shit about news a little bit more. And we don't have a legal team that's going to tell us to, like, well, I guess you might. But
Joanna's going to come knocking. Yeah. She's our GC.
But I feel like we can talk more freely about the news, and we're not going to dive as much into kind of like the CEO stories. So with that, I thought we'd do a little bit more of like topics in which each topic has multiple articles. So I gave you like, I don't know, like 20 articles to read. So I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
But we're going to be talking about a few things. The first one is there's some new grocery stores coming and one restaurant is closing. So we'll talk about kind of what's new and what's leaving. And then we'll talk about venture funding in Q1. What does that look like? And then we'll move into Blue Origin. There's a new contract, and also we have to talk about that all-women flight. We have to. I'm sorry. Then the fourth one, we'll talk about Microsoft and Amazon wanting to remove middle management. And lastly, we'll talk about AI and content. So, Coral, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Am I ready? Who knows? All right. So the first one, like I said, there's 2 new grocery stores and 1 restaurant closing. So the 2 grocery stores are Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's is opening it did open in Greenwood. It's the 6th Trader Joe's in Seattle and the first new one in 13 years. So there's that. Big lines at the door. A lot of my friends that live in Greenwood are very excited. Tote bags were popular. Yay. The next one is PCC. They plan to reopen their downtown Seattle store mid-July. So I guess they'd closed it a little over a year ago, and now they're planning to reopen it. But it won't be the same.
Right.
It's a small format corner store type, which I personally love. I love a market. And we're going to dive into that. And the last one is that one of Seattle's oldest restaurants, Virginia Inn, will shut down April 27th. I know we've got John in the room here, and he was shocked. But that opened in 1903. It's older than Pike Place itself. I should mention it's in Pike Place. It's older than Pike Place itself. It opened in 1903. And the reason being is that they failed to negotiate a deal with the lease, with Pike Place Market Preservation and Development Authority. That's a mouthful. Craig Perez bought it in 2019 with his business partner, and then bought him out in 2024, and then couldn't negotiate this lease. Yeah, I think that's that's the recap. So initial opinions, any personal opinions on these openings and closings?
Well, the first thing that I was surprised by was that, like, why does Greenwood need a Trader Joe's? Because there's like 1,000 grocery stores in that. I mean, there's a PCC, QFC, Freddy's, Lenny's, Sprout, which like I wrote about when Sprout first came into the Seattle area back in 2018, and it was like this huge thing.
It's big, yeah, they had it in
Whole
San
Foods,
Diego, yeah.
PCC, and Sprout, and like, but so there's just a lot of grocery stores right there. But Trader Joe's has such like a cult following that I guess it makes sense. You can have another grocery store 2 blocks away, and it's gonna be fine.
It also, I think, carries products that other grocery stores don't, that people may want to specifically go get. But I think they do a really good job about their branding and marketing. They're not just a grocery store. I would say even different than Sprouts and PCC. Like Trader Joe's has such a personality and I think tells their story very well.
It does. I mean, and any college student, I guess the $2 chuck.
$2
I mean,
chuck?
I'm dating myself because I don't think it's $2 anymore, but you know, like $3 chuck, whatever it is now. But yeah, it definitely gets quite the
That's
following.
The other thing. They're great at, because I go there all the time because I'm one person and they have smaller portions, which I think is good.
And more affordable, because when you look at Whole Foods and PCC and
God,
Sprouts,
it's crazy.
like you can go to Trader Joe's and actually like walk out with an entire basket full of things and not spend.
It's always lower than I think. I know. And one time I just I really wanted to go flirt with somebody, and I was like, what do I do? And I was like, you know what, I'll just go to Trader Joe's. Just flirt with every cashier there, because that's part of their culture, I think.
They're just very friendly.
They're like, no, we've been telling Rachel to get out of here every time she comes in. Okay. The other thing is anything else about PCC that you wanted to talk about? I know you covered them a lot.
I did cover them a lot because, again, just like kind of the grocery booms that were going on back then. But I was just going to say, like, I remember when they announced that PCC was going to open downtown in Rainier Square, like, because I had just done a big like cover story about it, or that maybe it was part of the cover story about it for the Business Journal. But we went like to the building across the street and went on the roof with Anthony, the PSBJ photographer, and like took photos with the PCC CEO, and I think it was Wright Runstead, president, who like was the developer of that property, and like did all these photos and everything. But what I was gonna say, I guess, was that it didn't surprise me that it shut down, because it was really, everybody really wanted it to be there when it first was announced. But then you had COVID, and then nobody was in that downtown area anymore. And it was a huge footprint of a grocery store.
Yeah, I think they said it's going to be like a third of the size now.
Yeah, so the amount that their lease and rent and everything had to have been for that space, it just becomes unsustainable. They wouldn't have had the traffic. And then you add on top of that, of course, they talked about a lot the just issues with, you know, homelessness and mental health issues and stuff like that, people coming into the store. So it makes sense. And I think it's a good thing that they are opening a smaller space, because I mean, we're not really far from there. So it's like, it was a great spot to walk up and like grab a salad for lunch.
Exactly. I agree. The last thing I'll say on this one is the Virginia Inn one that's shutting down. I read that not only do they pay base rent and maintenance, they have percentage-based charges. Which
Percentage of what?
Well, I'm assuming of their revenue, which feels kind of unfair, because, right? So I was surprised by that. I also, why is it called Virginia Inn if it's a restaurant and bar? Is
it on Virginia Street?
Yeah, but the inn part.
Oh, the inn. I didn't even think about that part.
It probably used to be an inn and they changed it.
Yeah,
I could have done some more research on that. All right, moving on. Our next story is about venture funding in Q1. So again, I have 3 articles on this. The first one is from PSBJ, and it talks about how PitchBook, which is a Seattle company, PitchBook data, they said for Q1, local startups are doing really well. We are on pace to beat out our 2024 rates. They're saying they landed about $2 billion for local startups across 80 deals in Q1. This is the most since the end of 2022, but they say, you know, don't be too optimistic because of the Trump administration and the tariffs and things like that. The second article was talking about, this is from GeekWire. There's a Seattle VC firm called Ascend, and they raised more money. This group likes to focus on being the first round. You talked about Madrona does first round and later rounds. This one focuses on first round. They try to focus on Seattle founders, and they focus on AI shocked no one. The last article on venture funding was about a Seattle area investor, Brianna McDonald, who I met the other week, which is so funny.
Oh.
Yeah, she was at Parkhurst Formidable event.
Okay.
She's leading a new organization called Ecosystem Venture Group, which would be combining both funding for entrepreneurs and services. So those are the three things. And since we're at Madrona, and this is your world, first off, do you think Madrona is in line with, they're feeling the same sorts of trends of Q1 going much better than last year?
I think so. It's honestly, I mean, everybody kind of watches this all very closely, and it was like coming out of the pandemic, and everybody's purse strings were getting a little bit tighter, and are you ever going to be able to raise money again from a founder perspective and from a VC firm perspective? But we just raised a fund ourselves, and Ascend is, raised their fund. So, there's money in the area for Seattle for good founders to be able to come and do what they do best.
Well, that's great. We could use some positive news these days. Let's bring us right back down to the Trump administration. The article talks about how some of these things the Trump administration is doing is impacting VCs. They're talking a little bit about tariffs, but also, I talked in my last episode about the pulling back of research funds. So how have you seen that show up for Madrona in their investments? I know you posted something on LinkedIn about this.
Yeah, there was a GeekWire story a couple weeks ago, whenever it was that I posted that just caught me as like one of the first moments that I kind of realized that there could be an impact happening in this space. And it was with the Institute of Protein Design at UW, because here at Madrona, we work really closely with them. We've invested in like A-Alpha Bio and Archon. They both came directly out of David Baker's labs, had worked with him, and now commercializing, the projects that they were doing out of his lab. And so David Baker wins a Nobel Prize, and his, lab gets all this attention, great things happening. And then like, bam, wait a second. Trump administration is cutting all this research, and UW puts in, like a hiring freeze, which is, those postdoc jobs and stuff, those researchers that would be working with him in his lab that could then spin out their own companies to do this incredible protein research that could be, cancer treatments. So it's just, that was reading that story in GeekWire was like the first moment I was like, oh, wow, okay, here's a direct,
like personal,
like all these dots are connecting here. And it's kind of sad to see. Just, I know that our investors that do the biotech investing here, we have like three of them, Matt, Chris, and Joe. They work really closely with all the researchers at that lab.
I was going to say, I wonder if that's going to result in an increase. Like, are the VC funds going to step in where the federal government is stepping out? Like, are they going to show up and try and help with some of I mean, it's an incredible amount of money, but.
Right. I mean, and it depends on the space when it comes to, like, the Institute for Protein Design. Like, you can't really step in very much when the researchers don't get the job to pursue the research in the first place.
Right.
Like, VC steps in once they've done all that research, and now it's like, okay, I think we can commercialize this. Let's spin out and give it a try.
That's true. Okay, that's depressing.
Right. brought us really far down here.
Bring us right back down. Another question I wanted to ask on VCs here is that Ascend, that other VC firm, talks about how they do first rounds. What are some benefits of investing in the first round? And is, you mentioned Madrona does kind of both, but do they lean one way or the other? Is it a kind of a mix?
So our core fund, which the two that we just announced was like Fund 10 and Acceleration Fund 4. Like our core fund, the bigger fund, is very much the early stage focus, because that is where we have a lot of passion around that. You want to get in there, you roll up your sleeves, you work with that founder from day one, hopefully, or pre-seed, pre-day one, and help them figure out that business and get it to become profitable and go on and do great things. Maybe they IPO, maybe they get bought, you never know. But like, that's a long journey. And if you get in early, you can really help them along that whole way. We work pretty closely with Ascend. We have co-investors in a couple different companies. Don't ask me which ones off the top of my head, please. But yeah, it's, I think, a similar sort of strategy.
And can you make more money if you start earlier on?
You tend to get a bigger percentage.
Yeah.
Because you're writing a decent sized check, but there's not a lot at that point. So you get a decent percentage. And then a couple years later, maybe you put more in. A couple years later, you maybe put more in. So you kind of grow that.
Such a risk, though, because what if the company's shitty.
That is literally the game, right?
It is a game. It is a game.
That is the question every time it's time to decide if you're going to invest in another round or not.
That would be too scary. Okay, so the last...
Luckily, I'm not the one actually doing it.
Yes, you're telling the stories. Yeah. The last article of this section was about this woman, Brianna. Right. Do you agree with her take? And reminding you that her take was that we needed to kind of fill the gap between the VCs and the entrepreneur and angel investing and just kind of bring everyone together. Do you agree on that?
Kind of yes and no. I read that story and I'm not super familiar with what she's doing other than what was in that story, but I know things can very much feel siloed a lot of the time, but I think that there's also a lot of work being done to try to bring the community together and make it an ecosystem. And I hope what she does is part of all of that as well. But one example, we started Seattle Tech Week. I think this will be our third year in July. And so we do that work with Ascend. We do that work with JP Morgan. We have like a kind of a committee of people that all come together to try to literally bring the community together around tech and startups and that whole ecosystem. So like things are happening, but yes, the more that you can do, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I saw her at this event, we were sort of talking about this idea of wanting to invest. She says, I'm not looking to find a unicorn, but rather I want to focus on a business that can be profitable. So I kind of want to talk about how I feel like companies used to start a company and you would sell a little something, you'd make some money, you grow it. And now we've got VC funds that can give you that, leg up, that boost. But I know some companies are going into like the round D, E, F, and I'm like, at some point, shouldn't you make money? So how do you feel that?
Sometimes if you're in those Ds, E's, Fs, like it's not necessarily that you're not bringing in revenue and stuff like that. But in a market like we have right now where nobody's IPOing, like you're also kind of just trying to hold off until maybe you think you're going to do a little bit better when you IPO or find somebody that, you can sell to for a higher price.
Do you think that's impacted the urgency for profit? Like, do you think people don't feel that urgency to turn a profit as soon because they can just go back and raise more money?
I don't know. I would, because I'm not in there with the investors, I don't really know the answer to that. But most of the entrepreneurs that I interact with, like, that's the goal.
Yeah.
You have this idea, you're solving a problem that maybe hasn't been solved or you're hoping you can solve it better. And really a marker of success for them is like, well, am I making money doing it?
Yeah.
Like,
I think what's in my head is like the 3 Netflix stories of like the people like WeWork or whatever. It's just like, let's throw a big ass party. And anyway,
right.
But
there are stories.
The outliers. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. We're going to move into our third story, which is Blue Origin. Blue Origin is a Kent-based company. That's why I bring this up. They landed a $2.8 billion contract from the Department of Defense for launch missions using one of their new rockets. It sounded like from the article, I couldn't understand some of it, but I think it's about security for the government. There were contracts also awarded to SpaceX and United Launch Services, so some other companies got some funding. This is the third national security launch-related contract that Blue Origin has been awarded in 12 months. I don't know what the average is, but to me that feels like a lot. Yeah, that's kind of that one story. The other story, as everyone knows, is about these 6
Except
women.
for me, because
You didn't know about it?
I had no idea.
Oh my God. Okay. These 6 women went into space and it's the dumbest thing I can even... Okay. We'll get to that. But first, do you want to talk about anything with the DoD? Any initial thoughts on...
Well, the only thing that I would say is just because you were mentioning you're not sure if that's like a lot or little. And honestly, I don't have a lot of insight into this particular area. But, just... once a company gets in with like the DoD and you pass because there's a lot, we do have some companies that work on getting that, and it takes a lot to be able to get through the securities and the processes and like the requests for proposals and all these things that go into getting a contract with the DoD. So once you've gone through that and you've done that, you've overcome this insanely huge hurdles. So then I think it's happens a lot more quickly for other ones because you've already kind of gone through the really hard part first.
Yeah, in a super, super small scale, I worked when I had a contract job with the government, and there were definitely more hoops that I had jumped through in terms of insurance and paperwork and background checks and all that stuff. Okay, the second half of this Blue Origin segment is that 6 women were sent into space. It included Lauren, Jeff Bezos' fiance, Gayle King, Oprah's pal, Katy Perry, a singer. You might notice none of these are astronauts.
Right.
Carrie Ann, some producer in Hollywood, and then 2 people that are in the realm of that world. One is a former NASA rocket scientist, Aisha, and Amanda is a bioastronautics research scientist. Interesting that no one's talking about Aisha and Amanda.
Right now, I was talking about Katy Perry.
Yeah. And it was 11 minutes to go up into space and back. And why I think this is so silly is that they're branding it as like this form of feminism and like empowering to women. And I'm like, none of this is democracy is falling apart, and you just decided to send 6 rich women into space. And also, why are their bodysuits like? Why is everything so? Why are they in full glam going? And what are they doing? I have so many questions.
There's a lot of questions, and like the thing that came to my mind when you brought this up, and then I read it for me, was just that like this was happening at the same time that the NASA like chief scientist was being let go, right? So like, yay, feminism. Like,
yeah, it's a clear example of read the room. Like this is from a PR perspective, a storytelling perspective. This is not the time to tell this story. I do have some fun facts for you though. So do you want to know how high in miles they went?
How high?
66 miles.
Okay.
And I realized I was listening to this other podcast where I was like, I actually don't know anything about space. Do you know how high planes fly?
No.
6 to 7 miles up.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. Now, do you know how far the moon is?
Absolutely not.
In my mind, I'm like, I don't know. It's all just up there. 240,000 miles. The moon is much further. So they went higher than a plane, but definitely not even close to where the moon is. They just went to the breach, like the point of space
where they could see the like planet down below them.
I guess
Katy Perry can sing "It's a Wonderful
Oh my God,
World."
she sang "What's a Wonderful World." All of it is so cringe, and it's just.
I will say at the end of the article, it mentioned how, they've gotten a lot of good feedback from people like, oh my gosh, I could like see myself in this group, and maybe it's inspired. Maybe it has inspired some child to become an astronaut.
Rich. That's what that inspires them to do, is to become rich.
I want to look on like the bright side of things.
I know. I'm so negative. And then like calling themselves astronauts, I'm like, you can't. I saw all these TikTok comments that were like, I brushed my teeth, I'm a dentist. Like all this stuff. Okay. I'm moving on because that story is covered in a lot of other ways, but I had to mention it. The next one, fourth one is Microsoft and Amazon want to remove middle management. So Microsoft has an article about wanting to do some layoffs, and they're going to target middle managers. Amazon has a separate article talking about how he wants to, Andy Jassy wants to get rid of some of the bureaucracy in their company.
Which means middle managers.
To me, it seems like every time one of these big tech companies does something, the other one, like they all follow suit. Have you noticed that when you were covering them?
100%. Okay. And not even just like local. Like it's, if Meta does something, Amazon's going to do it, Google's going to do it. Like they all kind of.
Like during COVID, I feel like that was kind of the thing too. Like whether they was work remote or come back to the work, they all agreed.
Yeah.
On their things, just copying each other. We've both been middle managers, I would say.
I was like a baby middle manager. I had like one person kind of underneath me.
It counts. How do you feel about if middle management being laid off?
I feel it's difficult because, we think about it in like the smaller spaces that we've been in where there's not a lot of middle management, and those middle managers are doing really important work, and, not everybody can talk to the editor-in-chief or whatever, your publisher, whoever your boss is. But when you think about Microsoft and Amazon and the Amazon is like 80,000+ people in this area, and they were just hiring like insane amounts of people every year for years. The number of middle managers, you have like a project manager that reports to a team lead that reports to a director of something that reports to a something that reports to a, chief whatever. Like nothing can get done. And like there was a line in the GeekWire story that was like, Amazon just wants to operate like a startup. And it's like, I'm sorry, with 80,000 people, you cannot do that. That level of bureaucracy, nothing can get done. No. Because in a startup, you have a very few number of people. So you all have to do 10 different jobs. And if you had to run everything by somebody else 10 times before you could actually like act or do anything, you would never be successful.
Some of it, yes, I agree with you. But so some of it isn't necessarily the middle managers. It's just the nature of a bigger company when you do have to have more eyes on things. And one example is when I was at PSVJ, I could write a description of an event, literally type it into the website, hit save, and it's on the website.
Yeah.
I contract with Avalara now, and for anything to be on the website, it goes to I write it. It goes to a copywriter to freshen it up, copy editor to look at it, then to legal, and then to another person who then puts it on the website.
Yes.
And so
you gotta love when there's legal and compliance involved.
That's what I mean. So that doesn't, if we cut middle management, that doesn't help that situation, right? Because you still have to go through legal and through copy editing.
And that's not necessarily none of those positions are necessarily like middle managers. Right. Those are like just distinct, separate.
Yeah, I guess my point is like it doesn't make everything go faster without middle managers. That's true. There's still some slowdown, but I agree that my counterpoint though is that sometimes I feel like this is their spin of we actually just want to lay off a bunch of people and managers are more expensive, and so we're just going to lay them off and paint it as us being more efficient.
And I think it probably lands somewhere in the middle there.
There's
probably just way too many people in the middle to efficiently work because they've hired so many people for so long, but then paired with, well, we can let these guys go that make $300,000 a year, and we're going to save a lot more money than letting these ones that make $175,000 a year go.
That's true. That's true. Okay, I have no sense of time because I'm at the studio and I'm not recording, so this is so nice. I love it. I'm getting lost in the convo. All right, the last one is about AI and content. I felt like this was relevant.
Right. I feel like you picked this one just because I was the one that was here, for sure.
I did. It's just kind of a fun piece on GeekWire about like how we are going to be interacting with content moving forward now that we have AI. They gave the examples of, I've been scrolling on Instagram and there's like, want to talk to this AI influencer, and it's like it looks like a person, but you can like, and it has like hundreds of thousands of followers, and you can like talk to them. I don't know. And then the article also talks about, I think it was Satya Nadella who's quoted in this of, the way we consume podcasts is going to be different. When I drive to work, I am able to talk to my podcast again and talk back to me. And I'm like, what is happening?
When you can just take like a blog post or written content of any kind and just like throw it into like a Google Notebook or whatever they call it. And then it turns it into a podcast.
I know.
So you just load up all these documents that you need to read, but then like drive to work and it'll just play it for you as a podcast.
You shouldn't tell people that because then they're just going to take the news and then put it on there.
That's
the robots are coming for my job.
People are doing.
I don't know how I don't know. I'm trying to get on board with AI. I did get on board because I needed ChatGPT to help me with my taxes. So I'm like not totally anti, but you went to a VC platform summit.
Yes.
Is that what it's called? And you posted about that. But what were your takeaways in regards to AI from that experience?
Well, first of all, for those who don't know what VC platform summit means, it's just basically a lot of the people that work in a venture capital firm that aren't the actual investors. So marketing, biz dev, a lot of different functions. And so it was kind of all about that. So there was a huge content track, and like my big takeaway, and I think I posted it on LinkedIn, and that's probably what you saw, but there's a lot of hype about like AI is coming for my job. I mean, you even just said it. And I like my takeaway from that, and I was already feeling this before, but then it was just sort of even stronger after that event was over, was I don't think that AI is coming for my job, but I think if I wasn't using AI, somebody who knows how to use AI and use it well could be coming for my job. So if we don't figure out how to use it ourselves to be more efficient and, do our jobs better, then somebody else could step in and do it better. Because there's a lot of ways to use it just to kind of improve. I use it in I use it to help with a lot of different things. You have a transcript from a panel of a conference. You can run it through an auto transcript thing and then throw that into ChatGPT and tell it to pull the top 10 takeaways from this panel discussion that so-and-so was on, and, then send it to him to share it on LinkedIn or something. You know, I can.
Yeah. And that used to take you, because you used to
Oh
do
my
that.
God. If I have to like sit there, these investors are on panels and conferences and just all the time. Like there's not enough hours in the day to actually sit there and like listen to all of these things that they've done and be like, oh, here's like 3 really meaty things he said. Why don't you like share that out on LinkedIn? But AI can help me.
I know.
It's
Like I
great.
said, I'm trying to get on board. I've heard people talk about, there's no point in going to VC funds if AI isn't in your company name.
I have a lot of feelings about that.
Oh, great.
So it's like AI washing is basically what is being called, because
Like rainbow washing, meaning like,
yes.
or like feminine washing, maybe,
Yes.
perhaps.
So it's, a company just puts a .ai at the end of their name and it's like, oh yeah, I'm an AI company, come invest in me. But like that is not how it works. And I think really, good investors and what our investors talk about is that, they're investing in the people and the idea and the problem that they're trying to solve. And so you come in and there's certain, they talk about these whys. They want to know like why they're the person to solve this problem, why now is the reason to solve this, like is the time to be solving this problem. And within that discussion, you include how AI is going to help you do that. You don't say like, hey, look at this really cool AI tech that I've created. Now let's go find a use case for it. You want to have a problem and a reason why you're going to be the one to solve it, and then use AI to help you do that.
Yeah.
Or that's what I've heard our investors say anyway.
Do you think like VCs, not just Madrona, but would invest in a company that isn't using AI, that isn't an AI company? Like maybe it's more of like a retail store, or like, something that's not.
Madrona is very heavily tech,
Yeah.
or, like historically a lot of SaaS, which is now you're not seeing just straight SaaS. It's all pretty much AI incorporated. So they talk about it as like tech, or as like AI native companies, and then AI enabled, and maybe they've had AI after the fact. So we kind of do both of those, but we don't do a lot of like just straight retail or something like that.
Yeah,
I feel like most.
I was trying to think of like what wouldn't be using AI.
Yeah,
right now,
and that's
so
the thing.
hard.
What wouldn't be using AI right now? There's some way that pretty much AI could be involved in everything.
Anything else you want to say about how content is changing with AI?
Gosh, I don't think so. Just that I use it all the time.
I've been using it as a starting point for some things, but I still like to prove it that I can do it myself, because I'm stubborn.
I just do not have the time to do it myself.
I know.
So when I can run a video through a program and it makes YouTube shorts for me, like I'm gonna do it.
Probably do that with this, huh?
Use Opus Clips. It's pretty great.
Opus Clips. Okay. All right, Coral, we are going to wrap up. My last question for you, I'm going to stick with this one for a little bit, is what gives you hope? And or if you want to answer kind of like, what do you do or watch to get motivation? So if somebody needs hope or motivation, please help.
I feel like I'm
by
not
somebody, I mean me.
I'm not a great person to answer this question, I feel like, because when I'm at home and I want to like recharge and all of that, I need to, I'm going to watch garbage TV or read a book, because that way I can turn it off. I can just shut it all down.
Okay.
So like I don't go to read inspiring books or self-help or like ways to get through X or Y. Like I just have to turn it off.
That's important too.
So if I'm sitting there watching Two Broke Girls for 2 hours, it's because
You're getting motivated.
I'm getting motivated to just get through the next day.
Well, fair enough. Thank you, Coral, for sitting down with me and for hosting me here at Madrona. I really appreciate it. And thanks for coming back on.
Thanks.
This has been The Weekly, with production assistance from Nick Patri. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.